This may lead into then the second part of this discussion, because if we decide to have an at-large mayor, that position helps to balance that out in terms of having another person that is concerned about, if there's one district that has a specific concern or a challenge, then the mayor will also, if it's at large, is sharing that. So, I don't know, it just kind of leads into that discussion, unless we shouldn't go there yet.
I'm ready to go.
Are you ready to? Well, do we? Okay. All right. Well, we can start. Okay, we can start the discussion. All right.
Okay. Well, I'll crawl out there first then. So the question, there are several questions here, but should the city have an at-large elected mayor? And interesting, just to start the discussion, I personally, I don't know about the rest of you, I have heard from very few people as yet on that issue. I suspect that more people are going to weigh in as the maps, as we get further in the process. But I've heard from very, very few. It's a serious question. It requires some thought and I think some debate. I'm going to give you the upside and the downside, and I'll tell you where I come out. On the upside, there is some appeal, I think, to having one person responsible to city voters at large, because they would be unencumbered by having to focus on a specific district. And we've received an email, each of us, from a constituent, and he claims in that email that the desire to have, and Kevin, this is not picking on the mayor time, all right? He claims that the desire to have an elected mayor rather than rotating the mayor position among council members was probably the biggest complaint expressed by people who signed the petition to put Measure M, the term limits measure, on the ballot last fall. I will tell you that is not my experience. I talked to literally hundreds of people while I was campaigning and while I was walking door to door for Measure E, and only 2 or 3 people ever mentioned to me having an elected mayor. It just wasn't even on most people's radar screens. What people wanted to discuss was term limits and how long a council member should sit on the council, and I don't want to go back and revisit that. I think on the downside, I'm skeptical. I understand, my remarks on going to the district's side speak for themselves. I am skeptical about districts from a governance standpoint, and here's what my fear. I'm concerned that districts increase the potential for council members to become factionalized and think only of their districts rather than what's best for the city at large, which I think is a guiding principle for us. And I think we need to work hard on this. We recognized that during our study session a couple of weeks ago, and we've got a lot of work ahead on this item, and I'm confident that we will be doing a lot of work on that item. So that said, I'm concerned that having an elected at-large mayor with all other council members elected by districts could actually increase the potential for factionalization on the council. And Kevin, this is why I said don't take this personally. The mayor is in essence an honorary position. And the mayor has one vote, just like the rest of the council members. I don't want to see a situation come up where the mayor either expressly or inferentially or impliedly suggests that his or her vote is worth more than other council members because the mayor is elected at large. Because I think that promotes potentially factionalization on the council and could lead to that. So I'm not... I don't think we should have an at-large elected mayor. I think we should have 5 districts, and that's it.
I'll go on.
If one other comment, sorry, Sharon. This is an incremental process too. If it turns out that, and we've been dealing with a heck of a lot of change over just in the last couple of years. Look what we've done from a governance standpoint. We've gone through this term limits. We've had a turnover in the council. 3 of us here are. This is only beginning of my 3rd year. So we have a very different dynamic on this council. No disrespect to the prior council, but we have a very different dynamic. I think if we wanted to ultimately think that having an elected at-large mayor is a good idea, why not approach it incrementally? Why not approach it a couple years, why not approach it a couple years from now rather than doing it right now? I don't think that's a good idea. And then I have some thoughts on couple of the other associated questions, but that's it on having an unelected at-large mayor, unless you want to talk about how many districts totally we ought to have. But maybe that's a separate issue.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Hold that in your back pocket.
Okay.
Mrs. Craven.
I agree with everything Tony said. I've always said that I felt that Camarillo had the ideal situation for mayor. You grab that baton on the first Wednesday of December, you run as hard as you can, and you come panting in on the first Wednesday of the next December. You have done everything you could. The mayor gets out, the mayor goes and delivers Boy Scout and Girl Scout Gold Awards, Boy Scout Eagle Awards. Sometimes the mayor has to have people help him do this, but the mayor is out at everything. The elected mayors I know, and there are only a few in the county, don't do that much. They're much more involved in the operations of City Hall. If you don't believe that, go ask the city managers where they have elected mayors. But I believe that Camarillo has the best situation where it has 5 council members, none of whom is elected as mayors, and where we rotate mayor. But I also was going to talk about how I didn't think the mayor should be in a position, or the city should be put in a position where the mayor could factionalize it more by saying, hey, I'll vote for this for you because of whatever. I just think it should be, and I also think, and I'll just end my discussion of the number there, I think 5 is the perfect number. I think if you get 6, you're just getting it way too factionalized. So that's all I have to say.
I agree with everything that's been said. I just wanted to add one thing about rotating the mayor. Although it's honorary, it still does grow leadership skills. And so I think that's really important to be able to be, growing and mentoring the younger ones here and all taking turn and passing that leadership baton or gavel on. So.
Sean, do you have anything you'd like to
Yeah,
add?
sure. No, I agree with what's been said here. I did hear the complaint of the musical chairs in regards to the mayor rotating. And then most people would tell me, think of us as somehow it'd be related to like L.A. I have to say, no, our mayor isn't like the mayor of L.A. Yeah, mayor is an honorary position. It doesn't come with any real special powers or special vote or anything of that nature. And then most people would go, oh, okay, I guess it's not all that significant. It's not that bad. They thought, most people thought the mayor had some real divine power or something like that on the city council, as opposed to it, you are the leader of the city council. You go and attend the events. You run the meetings and the like. So it usually calmed most of people's fears about the whole rotating mayor thing. I do support 5 districts. I think when you start getting beyond that, you really start divvying up the city. One of my concerns when we were talking about districting is what I believe to be the low threshold vote in order to be able to essentially win an election. At 5 districts, if there's 13,000 individuals within that district, ideally 8,000 of them will be registered voters, 6,000 of them will vote in any given election, which means if there's only 2 candidates, you only need to reach that threshold of 3,001. Whereas everyone up here, we had to get approximately 10,000 votes at least, if not more, through a big broad brush or a big broad scope of the city. And I think as you divvy up, if you increase the number of districts, that number just goes down and down and down to where maybe it only takes you 1,000 votes, and that's all you kind of need, and you're on the city council. And I just think that's too concentrated, it's too low of a threshold for what I believe is a very important position. And the decisions we make have a greater impact on individuals than what I believe that the decisions we make here have greater impacts than, what people make at like, say, the federal level, even, at least on people's day-to-day lives. So I think actually the more people who can vote for an individual, the better, because it hopes that it's coming from a broader, being painted with a broader brush, so to speak. But I pretty much support everything that was said here today. I agree almost 100% with Tony.
I wanted to say something here. My recommendation is that you not take a vote tonight on the number of districts. It's been a good discussion that I've heard, and that that be an item, and I think we've heard already this evening, that there will need to be direction on that at your next meeting, so that there will be direction as to how the maps are going to be drawn. So that can be incorporated into the agenda report that's presented to you at your next meeting.
Just make a couple of really quick comments, because there's been a lot said that being the mayor is an honor and a privilege. I have one thing that all mayors that I've known has done, and that is to serve the public, period. It is an appointment by, in this particular case, my brethren up here that have the confidence that the current mayor is able to do the job. And I think it's very, very important that all council members have an opportunity to be mayor. It is a wonderful, wonderful time in all of our lives. This year is extremely, like all years, very busy. But I have heard of other situations where they have not been able to do that, and it does cause some strife and discourse on council. And I think it will serve us well here. And I do also believe that the 5 council members is a good number for our city and the way that our city is laid out. And I do think in the future that it would serve us well. So I can, I can go along with my colleagues up here, all very eloquent, much more eloquent than I probably was. But I commend all of you for thinking this through and making your comments. Okay, so Mr. Tremblay, I believe there was one other item that you wanted to talk about. Was that?
I don't know if Mr. Pierce will allow me to do. I was going to comment on the number of districts. Okay, if I...
Certainly. My comment was intended just to state that that'll be on something that'll be incorporated in your next agenda, because as I had understood the comments from our consultants, that they would need to know by the next meeting, so that then the maps would be drawn accordingly.
Right. I don't think the council should have more than 5 districts. I agree with Sean. Camarillo is not that big a city. The 5 districts are going to have relatively small population numbers, and I don't think there's any reason to further decrease or dilute the relatively small number of voters who are going to be voting in each district. So I'm in accord with everybody else on that one.
Okay. Does